Alright, when you're ready to sew the bookmark, you're going to get a piece of fabric. It might be a different print than this, but it's about the same size. Your machine is all threaded up, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew on this line called 5/8. I don't know if you can see that through the camera, but this particular line right here, this helps keep you sewing straight. 5/8 is the standard for really sewing any clothing or pillows or anything like that. So when I put my bookmark in, I'm going to make sure that the edge of it is on that 5/8 line. I'm going to sew forward a couple of stitches, backwards a couple of stitches, and then just keep going, making sure my edge stays on that line. Once I get close to the end, I'm going to back stitch again a few stitches and then pull it out. Okay, I lifted up my presser foot, I pulled it out, and you can cut the threads on your thread cutter right there. These threads up here, they can be cut with your shears. So you just want to trim those so they're close to the fabric, and that way they're not going to get stuck in your machine. You can make yourself a little pile there. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to flip it around, and you're going to sew 5/8 in this direction. So same thing, forward, backwards, sew all the way down to the bottom. Back stitch, and we'll clip our threads. Okay, the next most common seam allowance is 1/4 of a stitch, or 1/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch on most sewing machines is just the edge of the presser foot. So to do this, I'm going to first of all do the zigzag stitch. So I'm going to push number 2, and then I'm going to line up the edge of my presser foot, the right edge of my presser foot, with my newly stitched line. That way the two stitchings will be 1/4 of an inch apart. So I back stitched a little, then I'm just going to cruise on down, keep it really even. Once I get about to the bottom, I'm going to back stitch as well. And then, just like the other side, I'm going to flip my fabric around and do the other edge. So this time I'm using, again, the presser foot lined up with my straight stitch, and that allows for these two stitches to be 1/4 of an inch apart. You use this seam allowance when you're making quilts, sometimes when you're sewing stuffed animals, usually not for clothes though. Okay. My last stitch that I'm going to do, this one is your choice, and you can use any of the stitches. Some of course are better than others, but you can use any of the stitches on the machine. Just don't use 18, 19, or 20. They look cool, but they tend to plug the machine up. So I kind of like 17, so I'm going to hit this white button, and then I'm going to press 17, and then it's ready. I'm going to sew that straight in the middle of these two zigzag lines. See how they're about equal distance from each side of the presser foot? When you're doing a decorative stitch, you don't need to back stitch. This needle will go over itself so many times that you don't need to back stitch. Only back stitch for zigzag and straight. This takes a little longer to do because it has so many stitches in the design. And I'll just let it go for a minute, and then I'll show you what it looks like. That's probably enough, but you can see how it's like a little snowflake pattern. So you would continue sewing all the way to here, and again, you don't have to back stitch. You could clip your threads. When you bring it to me, make sure all your threads are clipped as tight as possible. You don't ever want to have threads hanging off of the things you sew. And then this is a bookmark you can use, and you can stick it in your book and use it. The end.